Brunson. Goal.
Hello and welcome to From the BOLN, the Burnley podcast. I'm Andrew Greaves. We're still waiting for an official manager announcement. I think it's becoming clearer and clearer that Scott Parker, the former Fulham, Bournemouth and Club Brugge manager, is going to be leading the Clarets charge for the Championship next season. With me to discuss that and recruitment and some slightly strange goings on with the women's team and FA charge for one of our staff. We've got Chris Borden and Paul Woodhouse. First of all, Woody, happy 4th of July.
Yes. I only observe it because of the hot dogs. Please understand that. Yeah.
Excellent. Of course, it's Independence Day in this country as well. We're not going to get too much into politics. But I know, Chris, you're looking forward to the final season finale of the Tories at 10 o'clock tonight when that airs across various British TV channels. God, we've probably gone and lost 3 people there, haven't we? We've gone and lost 3 listeners. Never mind. Anyway, let's stop with this nonsense, this political nonsense and the Yanks getting rid of the Brits nonsense on Independence Day. Because we don't want to miss a thing tonight on this podcast. Whoa, hello. I promise that's the end of it. New manager, Scott Parker, looking likely. That seems to be the mood music coming out of Turf Moor. We're into the end game. Scott Parker to become the new Burnley boss. Announcement imminent. There's some reports that they wanted to make sure they were going to announce it this week. Picture of Scott Parker at Faro Airport in Portugal flying back with some natty knitwear, as to be expected. Woody, give us your view. Scott Parker, two promotions from the Championship with Fulham and Bournemouth, albeit probably slightly underachieved with those 2 teams. But what's your kind of initial thoughts on Scott Parker?
Well, previously I mentioned that I'd like the next managerial appointment, not just to be able to take the step out of the Championship, but be able to manage in the Premier League. And of all these various candidates, you could argue that Scott Parker is the most Vincent Kompany-like in that regard. You know, yes, he's going to get us out of the Championship. Most managers would, but obviously with 2 very good sides in Fulham and Bournemouth, he then also failed fairly spectacularly once he got in to the Premier League. And so that doesn't excite me. He doesn't excite me, but that doesn't mean that I want him to fail. I'd love to be proven marvelously wrong. But you look around the interwebs and you look on Twitter, and if you're going to go by the benchmark and the barometer of what previous fans say, then, you know, the general consensus seems to be that he makes Gareth Southgate look like Pep Guardiola in terms of his ultra-conservative football, that he dropped Mitrovic to play a left winger up front, you know, and just some very odd decisions in general. But that does not mean that he hasn't had a year away. He's learned some shit and he can come back a better and improved manager, and especially with his squad. But I have certain reservations, but I do hope if we do get him, he'll have a fantastic spell with us and we see a lot of success.
Chris, left winger up front. Strange decision to drop players. Sounds like the continuity candidate.
Exactly.
Absolutely. It's one of those, isn't it? I think it seems to be. We're reading like nothing but sort of criticism from Fulham and Bournemouth fans. As I'm saying to yourselves off air, it's well, it's not done him any favours that the 2 people who followed him, well, there were 3 people that followed him, 2 at Bournemouth and 1 at Fulham, have done absolutely outstanding jobs. You know, if absolute charlatans have followed him and made him look like the Messiah, the rhetoric might be a bit different. But I'm sort of looking at, you're looking at what he achieved, and it's two P's against his name at this level. And some people are, again, even almost trying to do the Fulham one down, that it was via the playoffs. But it looks to me like, his sort of demise at Fulham, and obviously they've been relegated, but he was squabbling with the owner, Khan there, who's, quite opinionated, and he likes a tweet and this, that, and the other, and they're having quite public rows at times, and it all strikes to me. It's the ambition in him. He was going on at the Bournemouth owner, the Russian Bournemouth owner. That we haven't spent enough money. They'd spent 20 odd million, and his team was full of a load of free transfers that had signed, 12 months previous. And if you look at that season, we got fired after a 9-0 at Bournemouth. But you look at that, they beat Villa on the opening day, which was a staggering result in itself. They got beat at Manchester City 4-0, which is an improvement on what we do. Lost at home to Arsenal, and then we got beat by Liverpool. So what did people expect of him at that point in time? But if you look at, I was reading a New York Times article that sort of said, he knew while he was playing, he knew what sort of way he wanted his teams to play, and he coached the under-18s there. He's got his pro license. He's gone, the steady route there. Coaching wise, he's got his badges, etc. But look at the coaches he worked under in his playing career. Mourinho, Souness, Ranieri, Redknapp, Kirbishley. I mean, which one of them is going to have him off the seat of your chair like a 100-mile-an-hour heavy metal football? It's just the word that stands out from what I'm reading. His teams will have resilience. And I think that is what we need at this point in time. We've got all the flair in the world. I mean, Christ on a bike, we might line up with Brazilian fullbacks on either side of the pitch. It's absolutely, it's staggering, really, when you think of, Burnley down the years. And, it's taken this long to have an influx of successful foreign footballers at the end of the day. But we've got to give him a chance. I mean, to see people like, I hope he fails and all that, and you're like, come on, let's give him his due respect. He was a damn fine footballer. He's a footballer of the year. He's done his hard work, his grounding as a young, a coach of the youngsters at Spurs, and let's hope he sort of spent the last 15 months, as Woody said, sort of doing the homework and sort of like, where have I not quite gone right? These, as his tactics evolved, etc. But it sounds like he sort of wants to know his players intricately, and then sort of go from he's adaptable with his tactics. I like what I read and what I see, and I think it could be ideal. But we'll go back to this in a few months' time, I suppose.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, it's a bit of a crazy start, isn't it, to the season? I mean, away at Luton on the Monday night after everyone's already played, and then Rovers' fourth game. It's going to need a baptism of fire, isn't it? Given the fact that expectations are what they are. We've talked about that squad, and we'll come on to the squad in a minute. And Chris mentioning Brazilian fullbacks, but it is, he's going to have to hit the ground running into, because the Championship, whilst yes, there is a little bit more forgive in the Championship than in the Premier League. It's if you're a little bit behind the line after them 4 games and you don't get a positive result against Rovers, you're starting at a bit of a disadvantage, aren't you?
But if you look at Vincent's start, that was a long string of draws, wasn't it?
Yeah,
up until November, and that could have gone either way. But obviously, it went the right way, and so there's a little bit more leeway in the Championship as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
That if there is that resilience there, and I think that's a fair point, Chris, that starting off with that resilience and not being beatable is, I think, can be a good thing in the Championship. And there's every chance you can then build on that, get through your difficult games, find out how you're playing together, and away you go. And hopefully that's what happens.
Yeah. And Chris, all the reports are suggesting that Craig Bellamy and Mike Jackson will be part of that setup. I mean, obviously them two and the new assistant first team coach, I think we've got his title right there, have been taking training. There is a bit of continuity there. You know, we keep getting told that, you know, Bellamy's well liked by the current squad and the squad that he worked with last season. That's got to be a bit of an advantage, hasn't it? Given the fact that, you know, between them, they have essentially got an extra promotion, because both Jackson and Bellamy were involved with Burnley under Vincent Kompany when we won the championship so convincingly. You'd kind of think that, you know, the structure we've got in place, I think Parker and Bellamy played together at West Ham. You'd kind of think that could be quite a nice dynamic from a coaching point of view, don't you?
Well, yeah. So, yeah, they at least they know each other quite well. You'd imagine they've played together previously, and it seems to be a far cry from. I think everyone expected this really abrasive Craig Bellamy, didn't we? And I think whenever you've seen him, he only did a handful of interviews, you know, pre and post match last season, but yeah, he seems quite calm and considered in his old age, does Craig Bellamy, and it's nice to have someone who's got a handle on the players, and sort of, you know, you're not coming in blind, getting to know the group. You know, say Mike Jackson as well, and like I say, where the assistant coach comes in, I've no idea, to be honest, but it's. Like I say, he has set ideas of what he wants his teams to play like. Has he adapted? You know, will he look at what he's got and come up with you know something else, something different? But I think, like I say, we keep talking about it. This embarrassment of riches. He can form what he wants. It's like a piece of plasticine, isn't it? You can sort of mould it to his will, basically. I think he can go any number of ways with the players he's got, and. Like I say, just get us organised. Get us, you know, you're going to have. He showed that at Fulham, that he turned around a losing mentality at Fulham, you know, to get them promoted, and you know, so he's shown he can do that. Because it's not as easy as just flicking a switch. These guys are used to getting, you know, for the last 12 months, they were getting pumped for the most part, you know, by the last 10 games or so, and. Yeah, let's get him in as soon as possible. Get him on that training pitch next week, and you know, make use of this time, because this time will be absolutely pivotal.
Yeah, definitely. And Woody, we talk about that squad, and as Chris said, you know, you could pretty much mould it in whatever shape you want, given the talent we've got in there. And I think, you know, the vast majority of players, if they're not back already, and they're not playing at the Euro, so Zeki Amdouni and Wout Weghorst, will probably be back by next week. I noticed that Manuel Benson's been in Santorini this week, but he was away on international duty, so I presume he's got an extra week. It is quite an exciting squad, isn't it? You know, we know what the previous incarnation of this squad did in the Championship, but you then add into the mix Odegaard, Koleosho, Steve. I'm trying to think of some of the others that we brought. Trezor, you know, you bring in Amdouni, we've mentioned.
Forget about Trezor.
You know, Ramsey when he's back fit, Masengo. You know, you've literally got.
It's bloody frightening.
Yeah, we've talked about the need to trim the squad. At the minute, It looks like you know, all four goalkeepers are going to leave, because Muric is apparently asked to leave Burnley. Trafford's apparently going to Newcastle, although not sure that'll happen now. And Vigouroux is apparently going back to Leyton Orient, and we've just lost Peacock Fowler to Birmingham. So we might have some Kompany-esque, you know, can Connor Roberts playing goal kind of nonsense kind of tactics. But on paper, and I appreciate we don't play on paper, that is a ridiculous squad. You could almost have two teams competing in the Championship, and you'd expect both to do pretty well with the right tactics and the right system, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like last year, we were saying that the previous season would have fared better in the Premier League, but I do believe that if we keep this intact, that this squad will fare better than that squad in the Championship. This could go bonkers, you know. And I like the idea that Bellamy and Jackson are still there for that element of continuity. So it's not a complete 360, you know. they're used to certain ways of playing. It all seems a weird setup, like this, bringing in fullbacks before we've got somebody, bringing in assistant coaches before we've got a manager, keeping an assistant manager who was going and then didn't go and then stopped and then was going to be in the frame, but he's now, whatever role he's going to be, he's still here. There's like a weird uncertainty, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out, because it doesn't seem straightforward, does it? I don't know who Scott Parker will be bringing with him, if anybody, or whether he's going to put up with pretty much what he gets given at Burnley, and that'll be interesting to see as well. But this squad, I mean, it would be criminal if we don't go up.
Yeah, definitely. And we mentioned kind of fullbacks coming in, Chris, and you alluded to a Brazilian on each wing. I mean, the second Brazilian, obviously, we've got Vitinho, who looks to be excited to be back at pre-season training. I think Vitinho is one of these characters you'd love to have around your squad because of the enthusiasm that he exudes and things like that. But it looks like we're also about to sign, and this is something that I think Matt Williams let slip in that typical Matt Williams style manner at the fixture launch, Lucas Pires from Brazil, from Santos. Spent last season on loan at Cadiz in La Liga, and Cadiz were relegated from La Liga. But we've obviously brought, he's on the way in, and we've brought the Dutch lad Chambord in. It does open up a bit of a question around recruitment. And I know, Simon and we all discussed, mud analytics and this Vincent Kompany vehicle that we're bringing players in, and that fear that have we put all his eggs in one basket. For the time being, at least, it looks like we are still, even in the absence of Vincent Kompany, identifying young talent that fits that kind of ALK model of bring them in cheap. I think both of these are either free transfers or 2.5 mil. I think Fab said for Pires. It does look like we've got some continuity in recruitment, doesn't it, Chris? We're not suddenly throwing the baby out with the bathwater and looking for older heads again.
No, it very much looks like someone's been on a computer and put the metrics in and say, so what's come out, and they've seen what's come out and they've gone and had a look, and yay or nay, and it's been a yay with young Robert's brother, Robert Pires. It's again, and he looks very much the modern Martson type left back, doesn't he? I think all the sort of descriptions is not so great going the other way, great going forward. So yeah, he's a modern fullback then. Yeah, but no, it's. I said that we don't know. We can speculate all day long about who's doing the recruitment side of things, but it will need peppering up with a bit of experience. So thankfully, we have there's already some still in the building. We've got rid of a lot of it with Taylor and Cork and Goodmanson leaving, but if J-Rod's still in the building, and Jay will be absolutely fabulous in that dressing room, and like I say, Berger, he's been in England enough times, enough seasons, and he's, like I say, that sort of Scandinavian, that region. I mean, they're essentially are they're English and everything but name, aren't they? They grow up watching our football, and they understand that side of things, and it's there's enough there. Like I say, Cullen, Brownhill, who I've said before, I think will be important again, and quite a few of the lads who played 2 seasons ago at this level, but. You'd still like to see maybe a bit more experienced old head at the back at times, perhaps. But we'll see how that pans out. But have to get the football manager out and see who's knocking around on the Freemans or something.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I mean, we've talked about the size of the squad and the players to leave, and every time I kind of look through the training pictures, there's somebody I forget plays for us. You know what I mean? Is that kind of squad, isn't it? Are you expecting much action? I know, a few people have said, we're still perhaps missing that real strong, tough tackling defensive midfielder who's going to go box to box if it's not going to be Masengo, for instance. Do you expect kind of most of the traffic to be going outwards with not so much coming in and a bit of a make, do, and mend? Because we're not too short now. We've got a new right back and a new left back in, are we?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the irony as well, isn't it? We get two fullbacks, having cried out for them for like 18 months when don't have a bloody manager. But that's the Burnley way. It feels like there's only one or two bits that need addressing, and there would have to be quality improvements as well. And that's the interesting thing, that if we went down the loan route, whatever it may be, you feel that we could get one or two huge improvements in certain areas potentially, and that would be quite exciting. But the rest of it, I would anticipate it's just, loans out, sales, trimming the squad a little bit as much as anything. But I don't think I'd expect too many incoming, apart from what we've said, certain areas, a little bit more experience, a little bit more grit for certain occasions when it's required. And I think we'll be good.
Yeah, definitely. And Chris, in terms of what a quieter transfer window will mean for Burnley, I guess that is the model, isn't it? I mean, we spent big last year. We brought in a lot of players who we were hoping we'd kind of realise transfer fees back from. I mean, if we don't lose people for a song, and it looks like we've held firm on Trafford, a good season in the Championship, next summer could be a really busy one in terms of player sales and a revitalisation of that squad again. It does feel like the business model of, bringing in all these players, almost stockpiling Chelsea and City-esque with some of them, it means that actually we have a really strong squad in the Championship, and perhaps some of those transfer fees that we were hoping to get for these players, we might get in January or next summer.
Well, that may well be the case. I mean, you certainly don't want to lose him in January. And fingers crossed, if we are promoted, you don't want to be parting ways in the summer either. The ideal state of play is that you're promoted and you have a better go, better stab at staying in the league with this group, and slightly enhanced maybe. But it's. I mean, our old friend Sasha's still, on the back of Belgium getting eliminated from the Euros, and he's still raving about Al Dakhil being part of the new generation. Sort of Vertonghen getting his nose rather cruelly rubbed in it by Mbappe the other night. He's not going to be hanging around, the Belgian setup, I wouldn't imagine. So, but Al Dakhil's going to be a Championship footballer. I mean, I'm looking at Koleosho. Italy will be looking, for fresh blood. And. Will the States take him? There may well be a new manager of the States, but Nonto was still in and around the Italy squad as a Championship footballer. So there's no reason why. I mean, Italy took a forward out of nowhere from Argentina, didn't they? Retegui, who's now with Genoa, but it's there for him, isn't it? There's, like I say. I've not been the biggest fan of Trafford, but Trafford, he'll feel in his head, I'm fourth choice, England goalkeeper. And it's not necessarily a bar to get in the squad being in the Championship if he's performing week in, week out. Or like I said, we don't know the script with either him or Muric. But if Jack Gorn says Muric wants out, I mean Jack's got very good in. With Manchester City, obviously, Muric being, having signed from there, he'll know people in and around Muric. So, nothing to suggest there would be, that would be incorrect information. So that'd be a huge shame, because I think we've said it all along. There's potential all over that squad. Odegaard, who they think the ceiling's particularly high with. Foster could become a real big man, big player this season, and we keep talking about the buyers and the Estevs and things like that, and we'll see. But it's going to be a big old slog again, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, I think we said last season, actually, Trafford would have really benefited from a good year in the Championship. That was the next step of his development, and the feeling is we rushed we rushed to kind of make a point that we'd got this player, etc., etc. So, if Trafford does stay, if it is Muric to leave, I'll be sad to see Arrow go. But this part of me kind of thinks to myself, you know what? Actually, Trafford in the Championship, I think he'd be a very good goalkeeper. I know a few people have been a little bit unimpressed with some of his social media postings and replies to people with Newcastle connections, shall we say, but that's perhaps for another podcast. But yeah, I mean, the more I think about it, I mean, I always get excited in pre-season because you get to see new training kits, you get to see, lads with smiles on their faces. It's slate white clean. It's a new season. There's that enthusiasm. Whether I'll still be like that after Monday night against Luton Town, I don't know, or some of the friendlies yet to be announced. But it does feel like we've got a real chance of, you know what, somebody coming in with a good system, continuity with Bellamy and Jacko. God, let's just give it a real good go. And, any negativity that may exist, and there is a little bit around various things, whether that's betting sponsorships on front of shirts or Scott Parker not quite being, a Champions League winner, having played for United or Real Madrid or anything like this. As Chris said, bloody fine player in his day. One of them players I used to love watching. 18 caps for England, by the way. I didn't realise he'd got so many caps for England at Parker, but 18 caps, I think, when I checked. But yeah, I think there is a lot of positivity to be had, I think, around the start of the new season. We are, one of the fancy teams, one of the favoured teams. With that comes pressure. But yeah, I'm sure over the next couple of weeks we'll be talking more about incomings and outgoings and everything like that. But we have had 3 outgoings on the women's team, and I just wanted to touch on this before we go. Now we know that since the new kind of regime came in, since Rebecca came in, and she was very gracious enough to come on the podcast, that we have seen a bit of a shift in perhaps recruitment. We've seen a bit of a shift in the way the women's team operates. But there's 3 relatively local lasses in Leah Embley, Evie Priestley, and Danielle Dean. I think Danielle had been captain for quite a while of the women's team and had been on that journey. All 3 leaving Burnley. I think a couple of them had already mentioned that they were moving on, but always sad to see kind of local faces leaving it, Chris. I know you've been around kind of the women's game in East Lancashire a bit, and you'll know a couple of these players and know of them at least. But it is always a bit sad when almost the corporate side takes over and we start getting dual registrations from United and City and all that lot. Yes, it's progress, but what's your thoughts on the progression of Burnley FC Women?
I mean, first and foremost, it's great. I mean, the 3 promotions in quick time to get to the level they are, which is, sort of knocking on the door of. It sounds very much like they want the top 2 divisions in women's football to be professional, so they're sort of knocking on the door of that. I know Blackburn are having their struggles in terms of affording that side of things. Having full-time ladies, as well as looking after the men's game, etc. But I just think I think it's quite sad. I remember when it was a great story when they took over, that they wanted to integrate the women's team into the club, and I think that's one of the greatest things that ALK Alan Pace has done. That they get to use the training facility, etc. And it's become a place where if you're from this neck of the woods, we'll go. It's a really enticing place to play. And like I say, taking players on dual contracts, etc. Players on loan or whatever the system is these days. But I was really disappointed to see. Lauren Bracewell, who's been there since time began, who's an outstanding goalkeeper, great captain, real leader. She played in, big games against big opposition. Played against Manchester United. Lauren Jameses and people like that, Ella Toons in the cup tie, 2 or 3 years ago, etc. Evie Priestley, Todman and lass who's come up from, the youths. She was partnering Andy Payton's lass, Georgia. And it was, they look like a real potent 2. Georgia ended up leaving, which was a shame. And Georgia's doing ever so well with Accrington Stanley at the moment. But yeah, and then you've got obviously Danielle, who's been there like a decade plus or so. and Leah Embley, who, again, a local girl. They're all Burnley fans.
Yeah.
And I think they're all good enough for that level. And I think they've all shown that they're good enough for that level. And if the manager feels they're not, then fine. But it was a strange wording, weren't it? They've left with immediate effect.
Yeah.
Well, the season's been and gone. You're about to start pre-season, but you just have there's a natural parting of the ways, surely. Though it just seemed it was a bit of a strange thing to say, and like we've seen with quite a few players who've left. I just thought there could have been a bit more of a tribute for, especially Lauren at the time. Lauren didn't get a great deal said. They've had a few paragraphs on the website, but I think it could have been a bit more of a nicer tribute for those three in particular.
Yeah, definitely. And Woody, I mean, we do talk about progress, and I was kind of saying before we came on air that this season could be the season we get out of that third tier into the second tier. I mean, we have been as close as it is to getting there without actually getting there. I mean, I think we've only lost kind of 2 or 3 games over the course of 2 seasons. It is progress, isn't it? And I think sometimes we do get perhaps a little bit sentimental. I know we all do with the kind of men's team, who I know we follow probably a lot closer than we do with the women's team. But sometimes sentiment in football is a bit of a wasted emotion, isn't it?
We know it's a brutal game, don't we? But like Chris was saying, there are people who've been there for a decade, and it's felt since ALK have come in that some of the handlings with the outgoings from Daesh and certain players just feel like little postscripts. They barely register enough to go in a tweet. And, people who've been at Burnley for a decade deserve a little bit more than that, irrespective of who they play for, what they've done, or whatever. And yes, we know that's the flip side to success. But, just providing, something a little bit more where fans can appreciate and they get a little bit more appreciation back, I think will go quite a long way moving forwards. I'm a bit disappointed in the way some people have left and generally been an afterthought almost in some regards.
Yeah, it does feel a bit kind of corporate. Like I say, we shouldn't take anything away from ALK's commitment to the women's team. I think that is, we criticise ALK quite rightly on a lot of things, but I think the integration of the women's team, I remember the women's team years and years. I remember my sister playing for Burnley FC girls and ladies, and it was literally like, clearing dog shit off a pitch on Townley Triangle on a Saturday morning. It's chalk and cheese now in terms of the opportunities the women's team has. So, yeah, we should, a very rare kind of shout out to Alan Pace and ALK for the work they've done. But again, not above criticism of perhaps the way, things are operated. And I just wonder whether with immediate effect was, the latest kind of media department intern kind of, using language that, perhaps is not what you'd see in football parlance unless you were a, football manager, perhaps getting the boot. But yeah, I agree. Chris.
Bloody hell! We can if we can give people extremely nice welcome videos. It shouldn't be too difficult just to put a little parting video together. You know what I mean? It's just general courtesy, isn't it?
Yeah, a little goodbye interview with the three of them. Like I say, they're all local girls, all Burnley fans. And that's probably for one thing I'd like to see a bit more of next season. I think we've seen a little bit of it over the summer. The media department, or whoever's in charge of putting the content, let's call them the content department, being just a little bit cuter with some of the stuff they do. I mean, we've seen a couple of bits in terms of, Collie Oshaw's return from injury and, some more in-depth interviews. It'd be quite nice to kind of have a bit more of that feature type stuff, given the lack of coverage we're going to get from national newspapers, perhaps. Over the next kind of the next season, at least until we're back in the Premier League with a bit of luck the season after. But we'll keep an eye, of course, on the women's team across the season. We'll try and get some interviews, and me, Chris, and Justin keep threatening to go down to Leyland and do some kind of live stuff down there as well. So we'll see if we can get that sorted. That's all for this week's episode. We will be back next week. Hopefully by then we'll have a new manager, and maybe we'll do an emergency podcast if it is indeed Scott Parker. And the other two are available, Justin and Simon. Unavailable today, Justin in London making sure that everybody, all the residents of Downing Street have packed up and are on their way to California or wherever Dishy Rishy's off. And Simon's in Houston tonight for more, whatever that competition's called, Corporate America. There we go. But I'm told he will be back at some point. So there we go. Excellent. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your week. Don't forget, follow us on Facebook and X/Twitter, B-Hall Podcast. And there are T-shirts available in the shop for you to purchase. We had a brilliant picture from somebody in Lanzarote, I think it was, best dressed man beside the pool in his From the BLN T-shirt. So do check that out, shop.fromthebln.com. Until next week, enjoy and up the Clarets.
Jimmy McElroy to Robson. Go.